Hey you, I'm Anissa. Welcome to Create to Liberate. In today's episode, we'll be talking about starting over. So we're a bit after the new year in recording this episode, but we are just 1 week after my birthday. Whatever season of life you're in, you are likely to go through change, go through death and rebirth seasons, go through leaving a job, leaving a relationship. Starting over is a forever practice, and so the better that we get at it, the more compassionate we get to ourselves in these transitions, the more fulfilling a life we'll have, the more speed at which we'll be able to move forward and not linger in the residue of the past. So I share this video today to really support those who are going through a starting over. In today's episode, I'll share how this is personally showing up for me at this time. Reflections there. I believe we are all each other's mirrors. We provide each other a mirror to be able to see ourselves more clearly. And so if what I share resonates with you, amazing. Take what you need and leave the rest. As far as our agenda for today, first, why starting over really matters, practical steps for actually starting over, building a more aligned life, and then finally, we'll close out with some good vibes. Starting over. If you are actually tuning in, you're likely a person who's gone through some level of change in life, gone through cycles of death, rebirth, gone through some level of transition, and there's an art to starting over. And the better we get at the practice of the art of it, the art of life, the art of starting over, the less exhausting I think it feels, the more exciting it could potentially feel to find ourselves again, to rebrand ourselves again. In our previous episode around feminine energy, I mentioned we are just like tadpoles turning into frogs. We are just like the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly. We are going through constant transformation in the same body. And the more that we can make peace with that, the more that we can surrender to the transitions of that, the faster acceleration we can get into awakening, expansion. And it's hard to hold this back, but I'm definitely going through it. And I'm kind of sharing this episode from the place of not being on the other side of it, but having done enough of these death rebirth cycles, I can share plenty. So why starting over matters. Point number 2, what you're doing is leaving behind what no longer serves you. You're leaving behind limiting beliefs. You're leaving behind relationships that are no longer in alignment with you. You're leaving behind what is constraining and constricting you. And so usually you are going through a birth canal, and what is not needed, the past you depended on, you do not need to be in the womb anymore. You're needing to be out in the world. You're needing to go through a level of transition. So the more that we can see these starting overs as a cleansing, an opportunity for us to shed what's no longer serving us, the better it will be. The more that we can maintain that level of optimism and know that this matters, because what's on the other side is expansion. Maybe it's not perfectly clear what that next wave of me is going to be. The vision isn't fully solidified, but I know what's no longer serving me and supporting me. And the more that you can validate and trust within yourself, this is why I'm starting over. And say that to yourself, I'm starting over. I'm starting over because I'm shedding what is no longer serving me. The more that you can allow yourself to flow into this new season, having the conscious awareness that you're starting over, because then you can start with intention again. So what we do in these periods of transition is we move away from that's no longer serving us, supporting us, or what is clearly rejecting us, and we move into the unknown space. And then we also know that in this unknown space that's ahead of us, we get to set some clear, conscious values, ways that we will show up, ways of being that do work for us. We get to really re-inspire ourselves and reinvigorate the light, even when it feels really heavy and dark in this canal period. But know that there's the outer world awaiting you, just like the baby's head coming out of. I'm really into that visual. So practical steps for starting over: decluttering, shedding what's no longer working, might be literal. So in that decluttering of letting go what's not working for you, it might mean that you're changing house. It might mean geographic moves. It might mean starting to get rid of things in your house, going through a Marie Kondo, seeing what is not sparking joy anymore. This is the art form. It's in picking up and reassessing what is enlivening to us, what is really inspiring us, what is lighting up our expansive inner world, and what is no longer. What are some things that we thought would be really valuable to us that no longer supporting our well-being? So think mentally, think spiritually, think physically. And the physical stuff are usually the scariest for folks, whether it's leaving a geography or changing jobs. Those types of transitions can be way more intimidating. I will share that I'm coming from the context of going through a level of rebranding. So There's this shedding of former identities. I shared a short video, and I have mentioned previously that I've released the actor title. I'm no longer pursuing Hollywood acting, and that's a beautiful thing, but also in the absence of titles, we can feel like, who am I now? What titles and boxes do I play in? And that's a whole exploration to be enjoyed. But for now, just be okay. Putting down the things that are not serving you, putting down the things that aren't working, and trust that the things that are working to be in your life will break through you, will be attracted into your field, but you have to create the clearing first. You can't have a really hoarded home space and have new things enter your life very easily. There's a reason for the purging. So think of that when it comes to mindset too, and the things that are non-physical. So what helps you in that decluttering and the invitation for newness and the art of starting over is identifying who you are and what your values are now, here in the present. Trying to forget the person that you used to be, that set the things that are no longer serving you, that have retired from those things, and say, here, I am right here and now. What are my values? So, for my example, with releasing the acting thing, the starting over is also because I just had my 33rd birthday and there was a level of renewal and release that I experienced. And I'll get into some ways that you can create those rituals of releasing, even if you're not celebrating particularly that transition. But really, in releasing the acting Hollywood thing, I was able to tune into what my actual values were that weren't aligned with what Hollywood would require of me. And it's a beautiful thing to know who we are in this present and also dissolve the illusion of the things that we thought would bring us fulfillment, joy, expression, creativity. So in this new season, the art is identify what are your values? What are the anchoring values in your life? How do you want to show up? How do you want to feel? Who do you want to be surrounded with? Who are people who make you feel expansive, expressive today? Who are people that make you feel your most creative, lively version of self today? When you can get clear on your priorities in life, maybe it's a season for prioritization of family, maybe it's a season of prioritization of health, then it starts to shape shift things. Knowing what matters to you. For me, empowering people, living my own vivacious, abundant, creative, joyful life. Last but not least, in the art of starting over, that I'll mention at this time and place, embrace change, explore new possibilities. So it's really difficult when you hit this phase of being in the birth canal. Know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but you also know that your way of functioning historically is not going to serve you in this new version of self, in this new way of being in the world. And so to be and explore this new version of self, you have to do things that this new you would do, which you don't already know what that is. Getting out of your comfort zone and trialing new things, anything that sparks curiosity in you. Because the things that you used to do, you might have called passion. I'm so passionate about acting, for instance. And then I learned over time, I was passionate about acting as a child, and the industry of Hollywood is not congruent with my values. It's no longer fever passion about this thing, but there are still things that I'm curious about. There's still courses I'm interested in taking. I love somatic releasing. I love little creative this and that. And how can I honor more curiosity in this chapter and season going forward? Because my passions maybe misled me. They were maybe built on wounded parts of me, inner child that needed to be seen and heard. Maybe some of that path was not fully in alignment with the new me and who I need to be going forward allows me to support my values. When it comes to discovering this new version of self, you might not feel a fiery burning, because if you had that fiery burning, you'd be jutting forward at a fast speed and you wouldn't even be watching this video about starting over, tuning into this. Starting over might require you to behave differently, think different thoughts, operate in a different way, release limiting beliefs, release our perception of self, and start really seeing ourselves as a blank slate, entering the world, going about this new chapter and season of life. And so to do it artfully, really allowing yourself to be that white blank canvas that is beginning to be painted on. So I already began to mention how this became relevant to me, and I'll go into more depth. Over the last year, I was doing a lot of healing work. I went through a Kundalini awakening. It really showed to me subconscious and unconscious operating thoughts that were guiding my way forward, that weren't in support of my highest self and my mission here. So as the year progressed, it became clearer and clearer to me that I needed to release the acting title. I needed to release things that were attached a little bit more so to my ego or attached to wounding in childhood. I do care to share things that are meaningful, that are going to be received, that help empower other people. And my desire to be more in service is stronger than my personal desire for self. And so as that transition happened, I realized I need to release this acting journey that has been successful only through force. It's been really successful for me to break into SAG-AFTRA and the union and get jobs because I was forceful, and that's how I navigated a lot of things in life. But what supports me in this next season of life is really surrender and really moving into more devotion and deeper spiritual practices. And so a beautiful thing that came with this honoring of the shedding of the actor title in the industry was spaciousness, to really explore, okay, well, if you don't have to appeal to Hollywood, you don't have to appeal to brands, you can actually be yourself. You can be the authentic expression of self. And what does that look like? And so I'm currently in this part of the birth canal that has so much possibility. And that can also be quite intimidating because I've gone through a level of psychic awakening. I could do plenty of things that were really helping people and really channeling and working between this world and the non-physical world. Do I want to do that? Do I want to just be a mom and have a simpler life and actually focus more on the richness of my personal life? Do I want to focus on maximizing this podcast and building a business out of it? Some of those questions remain to be determined. So when it was my birthday last week, I was in Hawaii and I was savoring the feeling of swimming in the ocean. And I was really savoring the beauty that surrounded me in the nature. And I knew intuitively that I want to be in my body more than ever. I want to be connected with my body. That is one thing that I know the new version of me desires, to not be thinking constantly, feel always on, responding to things. Like I want to feel in connection with this body, with my breath, with what's physically in front of me. That's what this season's going to allow me more of, to do that as myself, to do that authentically, and to bring that vitality that I feel from being engaged in my life to others, to create and liberate. That feels good to me. So I've gotten clarity on a little bit of my path forward, and I hope for you who's listening, who is maybe retiring old ways of being that seemed more grand, but weren't internally empowering you, weren't lighting you up, weren't setting a fire for you. Because if they were setting a fire for you, you'd be moving forward and it wouldn't even feel like this birth canal period. So I want to go into tips to build this fulfillment in this new season, in this starting over. 3 points. 1, building mindfulness practices for self-reflection and growth. It's so valuable in these transition phases to go through the art of really sitting in quiet, just yourself, and listening to what thoughts are running through my mind. What is this truth that's wanting to come through? I recently looked into my human design more deeply, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm closed in my cerebral space, and I'm very open everywhere else. It's really good for me to channel directly with my highest self. Maybe for you, it's really valuable for you to do some journaling, and that's your best way to reflect on things. Or it's really good for you to be in an activity that really just creates more mind-body coherence for you, mind, heart, body coherence, ideally. Swimming in water, rituals of purification like that, I deeply love too. They just are a level of cleansing that energetically I can't really describe. It's a felt experience. So what works for you depends on you. Think back to the times that you've made breakthroughs and what settings that was in. Maybe it was in group therapy. Maybe you had breakthroughs around your inner state and self by talking to a close friend. Maybe it was sitting in solitude in nature like it is for me. So for this starting over, we're not meant to do all this life stuff alone. Number 2 is create a support system. So that support system might be people, it might be structures and habits, structuring your life to be able to take risks, to rediscover parts of self. What habits do I want to install into my life that will force me into this path of the newness, of the deepening into my values? My sadhana, my meditation, devotional practice is a way that I create that with tarot cards and all these other things and chanting. But for you, it might look a little bit different. It might be really helpful to create systems of support through having calendar events every single day, to be more scheduled, to be more disciplined. A system of support might mean going to the gym every single day. A system of support might mean scheduled therapy weekly. A system of support might mean reconnecting with old friends that meant a lot to you. If you overinvested in career, Now it's time for you to invest in personal relationships. Then creating more deep intimacy might be creating a system of support for you. And for this art of starting over to be successful, last but not least, you got to reward yourself. So as you take these steps forward in identifying the new you and rebuilding your life, you need to say yes to self. Wow, I'm so proud of you for making it this far. And that might look like a number of different things. It might be affirmations. It might be like through that reflecting, you go back and look at the journaling that you did for the weeks that you were uncertain and you affirm to yourself, wow, I'm doing enough. I am so enough. And it sounds cheesy in some ways, but it works. Being able to read, to affirm to ourselves the person that we're becoming is coming closer to us, helps us continue to get there. We have to be our cheerleaders. We have to be our champions in this lifetime. Creating structures of affirmation help that. And there's other reward systems that might work well for you. It might be I go to the gym 2 days a week and then I have an acai bowl on Fridays. It might look like I go to therapy, I stay in touch with my friends. I get to self pleasure extra. Whatever it looks like for you, you decide. The journey of starting over is tiring, it can be exhausting, but I want to end on how it's so inevitable and important. And the more that we add the art to it, the more graceful we become with these transitions and periods of uncertainty, the more we don't fear them, the more that we're moving from a place of love and less from a place of fear in these transitions that are inevitable. So do we want to be on the struggle bus there, or do we want to take the fast, expedited shuttle? Life lives in uncertainty. Live immediately is one of those quotes I see all over Instagram, and it's so true. There's so much uncertainty in life. I think the LA fires here highlighted that for so many folks, myself included. The change of events with our new presidency has highlighted that, where it's like, whoa, gotta get through this. There's gonna be so much upheaval, uncertainty, and think back to the fact that all of your ancestors went through so much chaos to get to the place that you are today. And so if you feel like things are getting crazy, what is this? That's because you're very privileged. And I like to acknowledge my own privilege. My grandmothers were literally barefoot and struggle, poverty. And so for me to be in this place of having more abundance and having more spaciousness, like that is such a privilege. And so if all this goes up, at least I had it for so many years. And how can I therefore celebrate what I've had and trust that I will continue to navigate in the unknown, that you will continue to be resilient, that you will continue to be a survivor because you come from a lineage of so many survivors, of so many resilient people that came before you, and know that you're deeply supported by that energy and by source, by the divine that wants you, if you've gotten to this point in this episode, wants you to be here to be a liberating source of love and overflow to others, to support a new earth, to support an expansion. I am an Aquarius. What can I say? This is a season for us to really step into how can we be beyond ourselves, our personal egoic human self, and really operate from that true essence and carry that in this lifetime and have our knowing that, yes, I want to protect this physical body, it should be safe. And there's a larger part of me that needs to be honored in this lifetime that is eternal and that comes for love. It comes to go through these transitions and waves of uncertainty and always gets to the other side. Therefore, we're still here. And if you feel like you're hitting a rock bottom in that transition, I'm sending you so much love. When you hit that rock bottom, I also encourage you to really hit it. Don't try to escape from the bottom of the rock bottom through numbing, through looking for vices, whatever that is for you, whatever pleasure seeking that is. Actually, embrace going all the way down with the knowing that you are going to come up, with the knowing that you have strong mental health practices in place and good, like I said, accountability partners and systems of support to really help you in entering that rebirth. I think there's a beauty in the renewal. We really want to see that of things in our external world, but we don't really want it in our own world sometimes. I'm a projector in human design, so I tend to think about other people's opportunities for renewal. But it's really about really celebrating our own season of transition, getting excited about our own lives. And if we were writing a story about our lives, when we want it to be interesting, when we want dips, we want valleys, and we also want mountains. It'd be a very boring landscape for it to just be flat. We want it dynamic. We want more dimension. We want more aliveness, more love. And that's how we ended up listening to this point in the video or tuning in on audio. If you have gotten to this point, your like and subscribe and review are so welcome. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'm wishing you so much more grace in this transition period, so much more faith that on the other side of this transition, you are going to be more authentic, more whole, more healthy. But it'll take time and it'll take work, but you got this. Sending you so much love.